If your creative push has helped you, you can help out the show by shopping on Amazon.com. All you have to do is head to yourcreativepush.com/Amazon. That will take you right there and you can shop how you normally would. A small percentage of your purchases will go directly to helping cover the costs of creating, hosting, and maintaining your creative push. And you can make a big difference just by buying the things that you're going to anyway. Again, that's yourcreativepush.com/Amazon, and thank you for thinking of the show and for helping out. Your Creative Push, episode 202.
Train yourself to get on the path that you want to be on.
Don't expect there to be the fun training montage, because there isn't one. Just embrace it and know that there's other people out there doing the same thing.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guests today are Melissa Sue Stanley and Max Baer. Melissa is a Chicago artist working in a variety of media to create paintings and soft sculptures. Her work is collected internationally and has been exhibited in galleries across the United States. Max is a Chicago artist and designer. He creates and publishes the comic series Mystery Afoot, Sour Milk, and the upcoming Scally Ho. Together, Melissa and Max collaborate on fun projects such as handmade zines, murals, and live painting. Their current project is a comic book series for the local brewery, Revolution Brewing. They also manage and host the Chicago Drink and Draw Social Club. And guys, that's a lot going on. Welcome to the show.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Kind of before we get into all that stuff, I was wondering if you could kind of each give a brief bio, kind of how you got to this point you are today in your creative careers.
Sure.
I'll start. I'm a illustrator, designer, artist. I've been living in Chicago since 2004. The last 5 years, I was a UI UX designer for mobile and web, and that was kind of my main source of income for those last 5 years. And I recently took the plunge into full-time freelance very recently to pursue a lot of the other art projects that are more kind of illustration-based and comic-based that were taking up my nights and weekends.
And I have been working as at kind of a part-time, I always considered myself a small business owner, but having been involved in art by the typical, like, since I could draw or whatever. So probably when I was in my very early 20s, I started taking whatever I was working on at the time and turning it into some sort of small product that I could sell online. So it's just been a long road of twists and turns to get me to where I'm at, just a lot of trial and error with the different medias that I work in, always with trying to express myself artistically, but then also being really excited about having online presence and selling to collectors and stuff like that. So I started making, like fairy wings a long time ago, and that kind of evolved into handmade stuff and sewing, and that's gotten into the gallery plush work, but the whole time doing painting and figurative art.
So with all those kinds of things going, well, for both of you, you have a lot of different, like your hand in a lot of different things. Is there one thing that kind of like stands out as like the main thing that you like want to do, like that you want to go forward with, or is it all kind of just experimenting and trying out new things?
For me, it's a struggle because there's different medias that I work in. So I do soft sculpture, and then I also have a lot of like illustrative, personal paintings and 2D work, and then now getting into kind of finally doing comics, which I always wanted to do, doing that with Max. They're all very, very different, and I'm kind of being stubborn and not letting any of those go. So I'm kind of dragging everything with me forward, and trying to be as dedicated and professional with each of those, which is obviously it takes a lot of time. But I think my backbone and structure has always been drawing and painting, and that kind of lends itself to the other stuff that I work on.
Right. I think a lot of people struggle with that idea of not being able to let things go. It's like, it's your baby, It's like, how could you possibly like kill your baby?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been frustrating for, like in a fun way frustrating, but just, it's always kind of top of mind whenever I'm working on how I promote myself to galleries or, looking for work or projects. It's like, if I get a show invite, sometimes I ask, like, well, do you want drawings or paintings? And they're like, well, you want one or the other. It gets confusing. Mm-hmm. But they're both kind of equally important to me, so I'm sticking with it.
Good.
Yeah, I think Melissa does a really great job of splitting up her art psyche. Like on her social platforms, she took this move last year to kind of split those channels so that, this feed is only plush work, this feed is only paintings. And then it was served as kind of an experiment to see, where her fan base was moving to, and, kind of help also guide her towards where she's like putting her attention at the time.
Yeah, it's kind of like split testing.
Yeah.
Like you're able to like see kind of what takes off, and you can also cross promote too. It's not like you have to like have a secret identity and not like promote one thing. You can always retweet or repost from one account to the other, to help each baby grow.
Yeah, definitely. And people, there is crossover through that. Like, it was really interesting when I was doing that. It was kind of rough emotionally for like, it's so silly, but it was like, I'm going to take and split up all my babies into different buckets online and try and do that. And I have a Patreon feed, and I asked my patrons, should I set up a separate Patreon page for each, or do you guys still want to see this weird mishmash of everything? And I think with Instagram and social media, it was very like, yeah, we just want to see like this one thing and have a curated feed. But my patrons, my actual like collectors and the people who support me were like, oh no, we want everything. Like they were great. They're like, no, we want to see the whole picture and get all of the stuff at once. So still a lot of back and forth on everything.
Yeah, I see my patrons as like my Jedi Council.
Yeah,
like
totally.
It's like to be able like trusted people that are like, they're clearly like devoted, and they clearly have an interest and your best interest at heart too. So it's always kind of like a breath of fresh air. And even if you don't have a Patreon page, if you have just like this group of like hardcore people that like you can kind of trust their opinion, it's so important to have and to like keep that like Rolodex.
Yep.
Now Max, you're kind of in like, I think a lot of people listening like have this kind of dream of quitting their job and kind of just doing their creative passion, and you're right in the middle of that. So I was wondering if you could kind of report back to us about how that's been. Yeah,
totally. So yeah, my story's also similar to Melissa's in trying to lasso in all these different various paths of, our creative directions. Just a little bit about like my background. I went to Savannah College of Art Design for illustration back in, graduated 2004. And when I got out of school, I was all set on, I'm going to be a illustrator. And I moved to Chicago and got wrapped up in a lot of bright lights that were kind of steering me off this path. I'd go to, San Diego Comic-Con and discover lowbrow art and go, yeah, I want to do that. Or, hey, I can put up paintings in a bar and sell those. Awesome, I'm going to do that. And I could turn my apartment into a gallery. Yeah, I'll do that. And I can curate other shows and show other artists. Sure, I'll do that. So that was kind of my 20s, opening up galleries, curating at other galleries, starting my own gallery joining another gallery called Ono Doom with a collective of other artists, and hosting shows on like a monthly basis, and doing my own solo shows and exhibiting in other galleries, across the country. And I was having a lot of fun, and I was looking back and was really proud of all the work that I did. But then I look ahead and I still didn't feel like I was close to this goal. I was not quite feeling that fulfillment yet, or the fulfillment that I was expecting like at a certain age. So one of these paths kind of led down where my full-time gig was, I was a poster restoration artist, which was fun and playing with colored pencils and airbrush and stuff. A friend of mine reached out to me to see if I would be interested in becoming a designer in web and mobile. So I joined as an apprentice and was juggling starting that career and my previous job and owning a gallery and then trying to make work on the side too. And then eventually kind of built my career as a designer. And that was those 5 years. So last year I actually left a previous job as a designer after 4 years. and decided, this was my only kind of experience in design. I wanted to see where I'd end up. And I also, I started saving up money. A lot of these projects that I was doing on my nights and weekends were starting to build up. And you got to like a crux point where it's like either you devote all of your time to these projects for the next few months, or you risk ruining an opportunity that is going to have more of an impact on my life than it would be if I maintained this relationship with the job at the time. So I did that last year, trying that out, doing freelance work, and then landed on another salary gig, which I was doing for 6 months, also in UI, UX. This time with more responsibility, a whole new experience, kind of a less safe environment, and just kind of building up my career chops, essentially. And then kind of the same thing happened again, where
the exact same thing happened.
Yeah. Groundhog Day.
Sort of the exact same thing happened again.
Groundhog's Day.
Kind of like Groundhog's Day. Yeah, the freelance work hit a crux, and I took that plunge again. And this time, making that move wasn't as earth-shattering as it felt the year before. I knew that I can survive if this path doesn't lead me the way I want to go, or I need that stability again. I still had faith in myself that I can always return to that. I've built up a profession where I have a desirable skill that I can lean on. So it's sort of like trying to create this environment where I can create some flexibility. But yeah, so the most recent project that we're working on that I jumped on was this comic series that Melissa and I are developing for Evolution, Brewing, a brewery in Chicago. We started last year, and now it's kind of turning into developing the comic identity of their brand, I guess, in this weird kind of way.
Very cool. That's one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you about how a brewery is, first of all, how to pronounce brewery.
Brewery.
And then brewery. And secondly, just like how, like, what is the comic about? Like, what is that like? How did that project come to start? And how good is their beer?
The beer is awesome. A+ on the beer.
Do you get free beer?
We get the occasional free beer, yeah. Every now and then we go in for a meeting and they're like, but wait, here's a flat of beer, and we take home some 6-packs. So that's good.
I would do the job just for that.
Yeah. Like it helps us with our creative process. And
of course.
So what happened was it was all very, I don't know if serendipitous is the word.
Mm-hmm.
So a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were running the Chicago Drink and Draw social club. So before we got that, what happened was Max and I we work all the time, forever. And eventually we need to leave the house and go out and go to a bar and have a beer with our friends. So we started doing very casual, like not official, drink and draw stuff in Chicago, which is just like, we'll get someone we know who draws to come sit at a bar with us and we'll draw pictures and drink beer. It was just like art nerd hanging out. And then we started doing more public events with that, just for fun, partly because some of our friends just weren't coming and we wanted to meet people who wanted to hang out and draw pictures. It's a way to leave your studio and go out and work without feeling guilty about
right.
I'm still making stuff, right?
Right.
So we were doing drink and draw events, and then there's and so I was just following every drink and draw group in Chicago on Facebook, and one of them was like, we don't want to do this anymore. Someone take our group away from us. And I have a big project management background. So of course I immediately was like, I will do that. I will totally take over your group and host it and do all the events and stuff like that. So I jumped on it, and then we started running that. So we just inherited this Facebook group, which had a fair, 300 and something people following it or whatever. And it was a good group, and we started doing a couple events, and then out of nowhere we got, oh no, it came with the group. That was what it was. We're like, you have this group now, start holding events. Also, this woman from Evolution wants to talk to you about being on a panel at C2E2 this year. So I'm like, what?
That's crazy.
So C2E2 is the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. It's like Comic-Con Chicago. It's huge. This she's one of our friends, Amy from Revolution, at the time was like, can you guys come and talk about art and beer because we were doing drink and draws. So it made sense. She's like, come be on our panel at C2E2. So we were kind of immediately blown away by just, yeah, sure, we'll do it totally. Like, it was so exciting. And then we just immediately snowballed into like, you guys make comics, you guys drink our beer, you guys do all this stuff. And we would love it if you would do this comic book for us, and we'll start next year. And we're like, oh, yeah.
Sure. That's awesome.
Yup. It was a really great moment because they just saw the work, that we did. Max's comic books that he does, that we do silly zines together, but Max's like more professional work is really great. And they kind of saw how we operate, and they saw our artwork, and they just trusted us. Like, yep, you're the guys. Whatever, make our comic book for us. So we did issue 1 last year for C2E2. We have a writer that we work with who works on Max's other comic book, Mystery Afoot, and I immediately was like, Dave's writing it. And so we got our buddy Dave to write it. And then this year they came back and they're like, we want to do issue 2 and then continue developing, the project into other ways, and what can we do? How can we continue this? So it's been a real exciting kind of partnership with them, because it's not totally consuming. Like, our life isn't just revolving around doing this, but it's such a fun project, and we love Revolution Brewing, so it kind of works out. Like, a lot of people in Chicago do. It's exciting.
That's awesome. And then how do they actually like distribute it?
So we'll do a bunch of events leading up to, and at the end of the day, it's like, they're not comic book creators. They make beer, and they want to sell beer. They're the official beer of C2E2. So if you go to C2E2 and you get a beer, 90%, there's a 90% chance you're going to get, there's other beers there, but the big beer is Galaxy Hero. Like, that's the beer of C2E2. They sell it in big plastic steins, and everyone's running around drinking that. And then maybe an anti-hero for people who want to drink something different. But like, that's, if you're at, also, beer at comic conventions is...
Yeah, what? Yeah, but I feel like we only realized that was a thing, like, within the last couple of years. And then we started seeing it, like, at all these other cons that we're going to. Yeah, didn't really think that was a thing even until, a couple years ago. And now we're, like, whatever, playing a part in it.
Yeah, it's so weird to be, like, at a table at a con, or just walking around a comic convention, and there's like cosplay and books, and then everyone's drinking a beer. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, weird, but awesome as well. So, Max, with like the comics that you self-publish, and now you're working with Melissa, we can disconnect her from the call if you want. But what's the difference been like working with her, like working with somebody else on like a comic like that, like especially somebody that you guys have a partnership, like what has that been like creatively?
It's totally different. I really like the collaborative process. As a creative, I think I'm just naturally attracted to collaboration, and I think that was what was drawing me to like all the other projects and collectives and gallery stuff that I was involved in. As far as like my previous projects, like I was the artist working with writers, that has its own creative process where we're kind of critiquing each other. But Melissa and I's first kind of venture into working on the same book kind of equally as artists were these kind of goofy zines that we put together where we come up with an idea to drink and draw, or we used to do, or we'd host these public drawing marathons called Draw Until You Puke, where like, we live in Chicago, and there's not only is there something going on every night, but there's something creative or that's attractive to artists going on every night. You see these things pop up and go, oh man, we missed that, or we should go, or we're too busy. So we'd schedule a week out in advance and go to a different one every day of that week. And then that pushed us to put us in touch with people that we've never met before, or make new relationships, or, maybe join a new kind of public art ritual. And these could be like figure drawing at a new place, or drink and draws, or art meetups, or going to the museum and drawing stuff with friends. Something every week or every day. And what kind of came out of that was we'd, come up with goofy stories while we're talking and stuff. So we'd like put together a comic, like, hey, let's just make a comic on this. And the first couple of these we do like in 24, 48 hours. And, we'd finish it and print it at the Kinko's and staple it together. And then, hey, man, we got a book. And like, that was the quickest turnaround that like I had ever seen. And, I'm kind of late to that game of, that is an aspect of the comic world. But I found it really fulfilling, and I was enjoying, also like a pretty good relationship test, us butting our creative heads, which doesn't really happen somehow. we seem
really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like we kind of just can trade it back and forth organically. So like those specific projects actually is what turned Amy from Revolution onto us, and she's like, I want to bring some of that into Galaxy Hero. This whole like having a comic identity associated with your brewery for like craft brewers was quickly becoming a theme. Like Three Floyds has like an Image comic for Alpha King, and it's freaking awesome. But it's, very professionally done, like high-end artist, high-end writer. And she wanted to take it down more of like this kind of brass tacks approach. So when we were working together in Galaxy Hero, it was really like maybe I would do the thumbnails or Melissa would thumbnail out a couple pages. And then we sort of kind of like assign different panels or characters. Like, we have this character called McTaggart, who is Galaxy Hero's sidekick. And he's a giant millipede that is apparently feared by the entire cosmos for reasons unknown to the reader. And this is somebody like a character our writer Dave came up with, and we're like, yeah, you want a character that has like 1 million legs? Awesome, yeah, let's draw that. And we were both kind of concepting him out, and like I really liked Melissa's version of him. So like when there's like key close-up scenes or whatever with him, I push him towards her. And I think too, like our styles are pretty different from one another. I feel like I'm really kind of abstract and loose and kind of zany, and Melissa is like nails like the realism and is like just those chops are like way up. So like when we were planning out the comic and working with Dave the writer, like our initial like approach to us working together was like, what if Max does like the action scenes and then we have like these extreme close-ups that Melissa does? And it's kind of like the Ren and Stimpy thing where it's like, I got something jammed in my thumbnail, and then they do a close-up of the thumbnail, and it's all like
gnarly.
So that was like our initial plan, and then it's kind of grown off from there.
It's all been good for you, Melissa?
Yeah, it's been great because I always loved, like specifically like in independent comic books. I never got into really Marvel or DC or anything. That I started reading ElfQuest when I was in high school, so that's where I started. And just kind of stayed with sort of the offbeat stuff from there, and got more into zines and like local comic creators, and really loved it, and always kind of wanted to get into it. But because I was doing more painting and like finished artwork, I don't want to say like fine art or whatever, but I was doing a different style of work. I just didn't ever have time to kind of fit it in. But it's always been, I always do hourly comic day every year, which is in February. And so I would kind of like participate on the fringes. So it's been really great for me because I'm kind of getting into a world that I always wanted to experience and be a part of, but I have a really great helper getting me into it. So like there's things I understand, but when it comes to scenes that are, the characters are fighting in a bar and there's stuff flying all over and there's multiple people and these angles, I'm like, I don't want to draw that. and then I make Max draw it. Or like at the very least, there'll be stuff like I can't figure this. Max, can do a lot more spatial stuff. So I'm like, can you just thumbnail it for me? And then I can take it from there. Cause he can kind of break stuff out because he's been doing it so much longer, can kind of break out, a room and stuff like that in his head. And then if he thumbnails it, then I can draw it. But most of, like the action stuff, that's all kind of in Max's wheelhouse, and I'm kind of learning, but it's been so much fun. And our studio, our desks, face each other. And so it's great when we're working on pages, cause we literally just like hand the pages back and forth over our desk, and like you draw on it now, and then like, you draw on it now. And
right.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's nice to have that kind of backup, but also, like we were talking before about like having a Jedi Council, like people that you can like trust. Like it must be nice to be able to have that kind of instinct as well, like to know like, all right, your version of this is better. Like we're going with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think we're good at. There's no like weird competition or anything between me and Max, so we're very like open to who's the best person for each particular part of everything that we're doing, and or who just wants to do it. Like we work pretty well together, so it's been really good.
Very cool. A lot of this conversation has been kind of focused on collaboration, whether it's with somebody close to you or it's like going out and finding other people. Do you guys have any advice for somebody who might not live in a city like Chicago, where they might not know of places to find other artists to go out and kind of collaborate with other people for what they could do to find that kind of a collaborative partner or group of people?
Yeah, totally. I think because I moved to Chicago about 5 years ago. Or I moved back, I was living somewhere else and I moved back to the area about 5 years ago, and then I didn't really know anybody. Like I met Max when I started going to the city and just kind of fell into that group of people. There's most places where if you live near like a larger population, like any size city, it's possible. You just have to go out and find people. Like I went, a friend of mine was like, you just moved here, like you're kind of sad. I'm going to take you to this gallery, the Oh No Doom Gallery, and you're going to meet artists. And I was like, fine. And, and I did. Like, you just have to get yourself out there and meet. That's the night I met like Max and some of our friends and everything, and just go out there and just talk to people and have a beer and pizza and see what happens. But I know there's people who don't like even have that opportunity to like go to a city or a town, or they can't do it. My advice is always like, if you're living somewhere and you can't find that group of people, then you should really try to start it. Because I think there's weird creative people everywhere. And if you just put a flyer up at your local coffee shop or bar or wherever and say like, hey, we're going to like do a drink and draw tonight, like do that anywhere. And also like restaurants and bars are generally really open to that, because that, they like when people sit and drink beer all night. So that's been helpful for our group, where the bars call us and be like, hey, you want to bring your group over? Because we would love it if you guys came and hang out. So just start a group. And then if you can't even get that, then there's really great groups online that you can talk to. You can start or join groups on Facebook, have been really great. Critique groups or art groups. Find the podcast that you listen to, and there's probably a group around that. I listen to a bunch of different podcasts, and the One Fantastic Week podcast group is they're amazing and super helpful and friendly and everything. So there's always a way to, you just have to kind of force yourself to get out there, or just look or start it.
Yeah, sometimes you have to put your hand up and be like, hey, I like to draw. Anybody else like to draw? Like, you really have to put yourself out there, which is a scary thing. But yeah, I think taking matters into your own hand and kind of creating it, I doubt it's like that big of a responsibility. I mean, it is a responsibility, but it's probably not as much work as you might think when you're kind of creating something like that, right?
Yeah, no, it's pretty easy. Like at the end of the day, you just have to go somewhere and sit and draw and be nice to people. So that's really, and that's just how things started. That, once you start doing that, that's how you meet people, and that's how you start forming relationships, and then stuff grows out of that really organically, and it's fun and it takes you places. So
I love it. So with all the different things that you do, whether it's personal work or with the brewery, are there ever any opportunities or any situations that you get yourself into where you're just like, I don't feel like doing this, or any other kind of creative like resistances that you experience on a day-to-day basis?
I think one of the biggest challenges for me, like through my whole professional career, is there's this notion of permission. Man, I really want to do this thing, whether it's like work on have my own comic story or an animation, or something that you other artists are putting out there that you admire. There's this conception that if I build up to a certain point, someone will pay me to do this. For me, shedding that notion of permission, where if you want to do that thing, just do it anyways, and then if you're good enough, just keep doing it, and if you're good enough at it, then eventually someone will pay you, instead of waiting around for someone to pay you for it. And this notion of like, do it anyways, was the propulsion for me over the last, 5 years or so, instead of kind of waiting for fate to like push you in a certain direction, like creating your own fate. Yeah, I could kind of try to keep that in my back pocket at all times. Like if there's a certain passion that you want to follow, or an idea that you want to put out there, just try to get it out as soon as you can, basically.
As far as like day-to-day resistance for me, or just in general, lately it's just been coming back to, I don't want to call it fear, but that's probably what it is. It's just like, I quit my job a year ago, almost to the day. So I'm getting up to my year anniversary of quitting the day job. Yay! So for me, it's like waking up, if there's something, because I have so many projects going, and if I don't want to do any of them, it always comes back to like, well, do you want to go back to work? No? You better get going then. Like the mantra of just like, I'm not going back there. Like, is it really enough to keep you going? For me anyway, for now, like, being a year in, I have a painting that I'm working on today that I was kind of like humming and hawing about a couple days ago. And I was like, well, this is what you want to do. It's for a show this weekend. Like, it's important for you to do this because all the things that run through your head all trickle back down to like, if you don't do this, you might as well just go back to work. So
right.
That is what kind of, for me, gets me kicked in the butt. And it was kind of the same before I quit my job. When I was working the 9-to-5 corporate job, is you come home from work and like, I don't want to paint. And well, if you don't want to paint, then you might as well just keep this stupid job instead of, continuing to try to leave it. So it's always just been a weird guilt fear thing for me. But that was instilled in me. Like, I was thinking about it earlier, like when I was in high school, like freshman years, when I really started like focusing on, I'm going to grow up and be an artist, whatever that means. I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but it was just, that's what I'm going to do. And I got into this art class, and my teacher would come in and he would say, like, he was very gruff and a man of few words, and he would just come in and sit down and go, all right, work. You'll feel better if you work. You won't feel so bad about wasting your life. And like, that was the only direction we got for the day.
Awesome.
So, like, that was just what I was imprinted with. Like, just keep working. Otherwise you're totally wasting your life.
Right.
Yeah. Like when I was working the day job and then coming home and working on the projects, you would have like maybe a friend event, family in town or whatever, certain obligations that are popping up through the night. Or whatever, you're getting lazy, or you just don't, whatever. You do your job, and then you come home, and then I'm going to watch TV or play a video game or something. And maybe 5 days of that would go by, and I would be like, man, I feel, like emotionally, I'm like, I feel really down. Like, I don't feel good. And it's like this weird, just kind of abstract mental health thing. And then you start working on your project again, and then you feel great again. You're like, oh yeah, that was it. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that like organically over time is just like, once I kind of realized that, beyond like, hey, this is what you should be doing, but it's like, hey, you'll mentally feel better the more that you're investing your time into the things that you care about, the better you're going to feel. So now it's like become like I don't know, an instinctual organic push, I guess, where our brain's like, keep doing it or you're going to feel sad.
Right. It's like food. Like you need to like take spoonfuls of that kind of creative soup.
Yeah,
or
totally.
else you're going to feel like you said, crappy.
Yeah. I think our living arrangement is also super anti-resistance. And it was, by design from the get-go when we moved in together. We have the typical like Chicago apartment with a real big front room and the bay window. And we decided that was going to be all art studio. Like we don't have a living room. We don't have somewhere to like go and sit and relax. We're like the focus of the whole home, because we don't have like a studio, is just, it's all workspace. So when we come into our home, it's just a giant room full of tables and like, the drafting table and all the work piles everywhere. And I have a sewing station, and that's what we do here. We have a small room off to the side that's got, a TV and a couch in it, because we do occasionally watch a movie or something. But for the most part, I want to live in this workspace and have it there and be able to leave things out when I'm working on them and have them around. So kind of the whole apartment, and in the back of the apartment is set up like I have like a light booth for photography, and then we can kind of do screen printing when we want in the dining room. So we've just taken over the whole house to like, our life is, it sounds really depressing, like a life is work, but it's really great because that's what we love to do it so much that we just were like, let's just make that what we live and what we live in. And it's also, I come home and Max is working, you know, it's like, oh, I should sit down and work too. And we have a great time and it's fun. And so there's never really any question about what's going on. If I want to like watch TV, like I have to go in a little weird room by myself and it's lonely there.
You're shunned to the game room.
Yeah.
Well, I really like that idea and just like envisioning it like that you're just in the middle of like a creative life, you know, it's not like you put away the materials like when you're done and then like go and get them again. It's like you're constantly surrounded by those things. It's like a constant work in progress, which I like, the many different things that you do. And also I guess having a partner in crime, somebody to keep you consistent with your work too, like having a workout partner, you know, it just keeps you completely accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I love that. Hey guys, thank you so much for coming on, but it's time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today. Just give them your best words of advice and just push them to pursue their creative passions. Ladies first.
So I don't know if this is advice, but it's what helped me when I was working at my day job and I wasn't living the creative life that I wanted, but I knew I was on the road to get there. Like I set a plan for myself. I sat down and figured out one day, like if I'm at this point, which was not super great, but how long, did all the math, how long will it take me to save up this much money and get these things that I feel like I need to start so that I can quit my job and not worry about stuff for, you know, like a year or whatever. And I did all the math and sat down and looked at it, and it was like 3 years. And that was just the reality of it. Was like I kind of started out with nothing, and because of some weird like life stuff that had happened. So I was like, all right, well it made sense. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not. It was totally logical that it would take that long to save up that much money to make, you know, rent and whatever else I needed to live on, and maybe get like a part-time job at like I have a waitressing gig and stuff. But anyway, so I sat down and figured, and when you look at 3 years, you're like, oh, that's such a bummer, but you have to do it. And so what I would just tell myself when I would like walk to work in the morning is like, there is no montage. And that was like my mantra for the whole time that I was doing the work and then coming home from work and then working on my personal projects every night and just doing that for 3 years. It sounds, it's like all the bits that you don't see in the Rocky montage. It's really boring. And, but the mantra, like, there is no montage, like it actually helped me through. Like, you have to live through all of this to get to where you're going. So you may as well like live it. Like the job I had, I worked in project management specifically so that when I did quit my job, I would have the experience needed to run the business side of what I knew of the art that I was going to make. So it was like, well, I'm working at this corporate job and it's kind of shitty, but like it has a purpose. Like this is all part of the process. So, and just every day walking into there is no montage. We're going to have a fine day. It's going to be great. And the funny thing is, like, when I quit my job and then came home and sat down at my drawing table, I was like, now what? I have to spend 2 years getting my feet under me as an independent artist. Like, you don't just jump into, like, you quit your job, amazing art career. So it's like, right. It's the same thing again. There is no montage, and that's fine. And when you embrace that and live through all those moments, it makes it more somehow endurable and fun. And that's just what got me through. So I don't know if that's terribly helpful or inspiring, but it's more of like a solidarity. Like, you can get through this. You just have to get up and do every day, and don't expect there to be the fun training montage, because there isn't one. Just embrace it and know that there's other people out there doing the same thing, and we're all with you, man.
Right. Yeah. It's like like you said, doing the math and just like kind of having that That's the importance of having that end goal and knowing that, this is what you're working for every single day to get to this point. And then to know that once you get to that point, it probably won't feel like this like grand victory, like you're at the top of a mountain. It's just like the goals change. Now you have new goals. Like, all right, now we got to work on this goal to get to this point in my career.
Yeah, it's just a whole bunch of more stuff.
Yeah. So just to not be surprised about that.
Yep.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Melissa said, we all do what we have to do to survive. We all have our jobs or our methods of making income. We all have our different living situations, and it's trying to take your situation and inject as much of what you want to achieve, your creative goals into that life to make that work, knowing that like you don't have an entire day or an entire week to devote to your passions at this time, so how can I inject this into what I'm doing right now? And when I first moved to Chicago and, I had like a retail job, we would have our like 15-minute like smoke breaks or whatever that we could have. I don't know if that's still a thing. And I would go outside, buy a Moleskine, and I'd stand outside and just use that time to sketch and then go back inside. And then it also kind of made me feel like I was, still had like, hey, I got to do this to pay rent or whatever. But at the same time, like this is making me feel like I'm also having more control over my life. And another purpose of that was too, for me, I was on this path through college where, hey, this is the profession that I want. This is the kind of art that I want to do. And then I was introduced to a whole different world and all these different avenues that I wasn't really aware of that actually appealed to me more. And I was seeing all this artwork that, man, I wish my stuff looked like that. And or was akin to this or something, and sketching your sketchbook and seeing things that you're not happy with. How do I get my work to this level that I'm happy with, which you don't even know what that's going to look like on the other side of the fence. So my solution was getting a Moleskine, learning what my faults were, pinpointing my faults. Hey, I spent too much time sketching with pencil. So I'm going to grab a big pen and I'm just going to devote all my energy to that. I want to come up with a different style or a different way of looking at things. So I'm just going to try to find it. So I would just fill up Moleskine after Moleskine of horrible sketches, of just one after another, all terrible. Maybe one or two. I'm like, yeah, this is all right. Or I'd like make a painting out of that. Over time, over years or whatever, I would build up a certain confidence of my line work, a confidence in like the craft, and then just organically carve out this path of where I want to be with my style and give yourself this direction there. It's a difficult thing to find your voice creatively because there's what you put out now. There's you can be influenced by the work around you. You can change certain things about how you work, or try to mash together certain styles or techniques to find something new. But it's always coming from you, so you kind of have to put yourself in these situations to, I guess, train yourself to get on the path that you want to be on.
Yeah, absolutely, and also. I really like that part of your story where it's just like, crappy drawing after crappy drawing, like being okay with having crappy drawings and just continuing to fill in the pages. You're eventually going to get better. Like you have no choice but to get better. And it's kind of not getting too frustrated with yourself and the fact that you're not at that point yet, and just to kind of keep filling them in,
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show and for giving us that push today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Your show is certainly a source of inspiration for us. We're big podcast nuts. They're always playing on the background for our own sources of inspiration. So it's an honor to be involved.
Thank you so much. No, really, that's an honor, and the honor is mine to be part of your studio sessions. So that's really cool.
Awesome.
You can find Melissa at melissasuestanley.net. And you can find Max at maxbearart.com. And we'll have everything linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Melissa and Max. Guys, thanks again.
Thanks.
I had so much fun talking with Melissa and Max. Remember, there is no montage. You're going to be going along this long creative journey. And when we think about these long creative journeys, we often make them this bite-sized montage in our heads, like this Rocky type of montage. And Rocky's been coming up. It's been a theme in the last few episodes of the podcast, actually, because your creative pursuit, your creative journey is like a battle where you have to battle all of these different resistances to get to the point that you want to be at. You have to train to beat them so that at the end of this, montage, you can be standing at the top of the art museum steps or the top of the mountain with this kind of fist pumping, celebration, this triumphant moment. But it's not like that at all in real life. It's a much longer, much harder, and much more boring series of events than that. And that's why it's really important to remember that it will get boring, it will get frustrating, and it won't be as quick as this Rocky type montage. And like Max was saying, as you're going through this, non-montage type of path, to not get discouraged when your art sucks or whatever your creative passion isn't where you want it to be. It might feel like you're not progressing. It might feel like you're not getting better and that you just keep creating this crap, but you have to get through all that crap to get to the good stuff. The thing about a non-montage type of scene, a non-montage type of movie, a non-montage type of existence is the fact that you can't see that progress immediately. But I promise you, if you are creating every single day, if you are working at your craft, you are getting better. It's just a matter of a longer period of time, a life devoted to this creative passion. So really remember that. And also I loved what they had to say about collaboration. And this is the episode that really pushed me to finally create that Facebook group. When Melissa was talking about all her favorite podcasts and how they have great Facebook groups, I was like, oh God, it's about time. Like I mentioned in the very first episode, I wanted to create a Facebook group, and here, episode 202, I finally have done it. So yourcreativepush.com/group is where you can go to get to the Facebook group. Already, so many of you have joined and started the conversation. It's a wonderful start, and I really love what you guys have to say. I want you to share your work. I want you to work with each other. I want you to support each other and maybe even find a collaboration partner to work with going forward. So again, that's yourcreativepush.com/group, or you can just go on Facebook and search for Your Creative Push. There's the page, there's also the group, and click join, and you'll be in and you can join the discussion and really start to create a community around this podcast. On Thursday, we have Catherine Moore. Catherine is a really talented artist. I had a lot of fun talking with her, and she has a lot to say about making the transition from doing freelance work to exhibiting her own work in galleries. So a really great episode for you on Thursday. You can find Catherine at teandcanvas.com. That's teandcanvas.com. Or you can head to yourcreativepush.com/202. That's today's episode to find links to all her stuff in preparation for her discussion on Thursday. But that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done, so go and get it done. Draw until you puke. I love you all, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.